Hello, everyone, and welcome to Four Seasons on Saturday, the first session with our new name and the first session back after a several-month hiatus, during which we have been digesting and thoroughly enjoying the Four Season box set, working our way back to you, the massive box set, finally released this past June. That box set will be the subject of the next several, at least, of these sessions. And today we are discussing CD number 22 from the box set, the Motown Previously Unreleased, which we consider as the centerpiece of the box set. And we'll be focusing on what I consider a truly intriguing story of how 13 of these previously unreleased tracks were released and included in the box set. And we have just the person to tell that story. We're very fortunate to have as our special guest a person intimately involved in that story, Mr. Ken Charmer.
Yep.
Ken, of course, is our usual moderator and the originator of this program, but he served as the master track advisor for the box set and wrote that fantastic collector's collector's guide and the track information booklet in the box set. And you may also know Ken as the founder of the four-season Motown Unreleased campaign, and undoubtedly the person most responsible for getting those 13 tracks included in the box set. And Ken will recount that saga for us today. We also have two others with us, one new to the group, Mr. George Perez, known to us as George Music for All Seasons. George has his own Facebook page and YouTube channel devoted to the Four Seasons. Glad to have George aboard. And a regular member of the crew, Chuck Walker, our West Coast representative, gives us his West Coast perspective on the Four Seasons. Chuck is a longtime Four Season fan, and he was involved in the Edizione. I got to get that Italian pronunciation just right. Edizione d'Oro, ace version of that album. I'm Anthony Colatrella. Please call me Tony, and let's get started. I'll start with just a little bit of personal perspective going back several decades. After the scarcity of the material from the Four Seasons during their 3 years at Motown, shortly thereafter, from their departure, we hear My Eyes Adored You, Who Loves You, and then an entire album, Inside You. So I say to myself, oh my God, wait a minute, what happened? Why didn't we hear any of this music when the Four Seasons were still at Motown? So that's back in 1975, suspicions that something was just not right at Motown started. All right, Ken, so what was the first time that you started to think that maybe there was more music at Motown than we knew about?
It started really to be suspicious about the time that the Superstars edition came out on CD as the first of the releases of Motown material. And we thought, well, why such a meager collection? Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine who was a sound engineer in Germany worked at getting the bootleg version of the Motown tracks out, which was called The Night Stroke Inside You, which he put out on a bootleg label. And
that was in 1995, right?
That was 1995, yeah. And then we became suspicious after I'd been given one man by a guy from Tarragon Records called Elliot Goshman, who'd found one man in a Philips master tape can in 1997 and given me that to give free to the fans. Peter Bennett had said, no, this is not the Four Seasons. There's no further unreleased tracks by the Four Seasons. And we
first time we heard from Peter Bennett, but
that was the first time I heard from Peter Bennett. Although we did try to start a website at that time, and he issued a cease and desist order to close us down, but that didn't deter us. We were disappointed, but we started again. But we were always looking for unreleased tracks. So the question was, surely there must be. We haven't heard anything for so long since the Inside You album had come out. We'd only had this one release on CD and the bootleg. Then why was the Four Seasons partnership acting this way? And they constantly refused to communicate with us after they'd attempted to get us to be an official fan club by offering us money, and then we turned that down because they said we couldn't speak to any of the Four Seasons, and that was obviously beyond a joke because we were already in touch with Joe Long and John Piver. But we just continued to accept that this is the way fans were being treated by the Four Seasons partnership until it got to 2001, and I received from a guy called Mick Wilding, who's actually is his birthday today, and he sent us a note saying that these were tracks that he'd been given information on. And there were something like 30 to 40 tracks with titles that we'd never heard of before. And that was when things really started, and when we got to a point, and me particularly, of saying, well, we shouldn't accept this. We have to keep searching for it. But at the time, nobody wanted to know. And although, so I'm saying,
I had a question. Were any of those tracks familiar to you, or they were something you had never heard about before?
There was only one track that I recalled knowing of, and that was a track called "With You," which was obviously a track I'd identified. It was released on a 1970s album. Whether it was the same track or not, I didn't know, but it had the same title. And
did Motown become aware of you receiving that list, or was it something that was entirely surreptitious or secretive?
Yeah,
cloak and dagger.
Through a contact of mine called Paul Nixon, who'd been the man who had compiled the Motown unreleased Cellarful of Motown series for the Northern Soul scene in the UK. He got me information, and I got in touch with Harry Weinger, who was the CEO of Motown Universal and had been responsible for great releases, including the Spinners box set and others, which he had a really big name in the re-releases market. But he said to me that really we couldn't issue anything unless the artist agreed to it, and that was always the case with Motown Universal Motown releases, because Universal had acquired Motown and all of their assets by that time. But it wasn't until post the launch of Jersey Boys that we really had to start working at it, because obviously Jersey Boys changed the whole complexion.
Changed everything.
Yeah, sort of renewed interest in the Four Seasons and their music tremendously.
Yeah, huge.
So we thought, riding on the back of that interest, we'd see if we could get some interest in the Motown unreleased tracks that we'd heard of, and so as had been nothing before, I talked to Paul Nixon, and we compiled in 2007, at the height of the Jersey Boys, a proposed UK release, which he had access to the vaults, well, at least the information in the vaults, a database, and we thought, well, we could get this out because the UK market for Four Seasons stuff and the UK market for Motown stuff was very, very strong in the 90s and 2000 period, and with the rise of Jersey Boys, we thought it was a good time to. But again, Harry Weinger, yeah.
Yes,
I
Chuck.
think
Sure.
Jersey Boys premiered on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And I think it was a surprise to the partnership how successful it was out on the West Coast. The original premiere run was extended on the West Coast before it moved to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they realized the value of the catalog that was being played on the Jersey Boys set was significant. And that's why they seem to tend to focus on continued reissue, like the box set with Rhino of the original pressings of the songs from Jersey Boys, and then moved on from there.
Yeah.
But that was a key. That was a key to their rebirth. They had a new market, a new generation of listeners.
Without a doubt.
George.
If I may, I will agree with Chuck 100%, because when it started here on the West Coast in San Diego, I mean, reading from what Frankie and Bob would say, they were just so surprised at the rave reviews and the number of people that were going to see the play here on the West Coast, due to the fact that they were an East Coast band and they could only imagine what would happen on the East Coast, which we all know what happened.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it became a cash machine, and we know a worldwide success, and it made them more money than I have been told by, I can't remember who, that it made them more money than they ever made during their career. I think it might have been Charlie Columbia who did that to me.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and of course it enabled Bob Crew, even on the small royalty that he was getting, to set up the Bob Crew Foundation,
Right.
Rhode Island, and that's a foundation to help young musicians. So that was a major achievement. So we can see that the fame and popularity of it, and Bob and Frankie didn't want any distraction from that. Which when Harry Weinger said to me that to get this box set out in the UK of two CDs of Motown unreleased, we'd have to get permission from Bob and Frankie in 2007. I got in touch with Peter Bennett, because although I wasn't on speaking terms with him, really, I was the representative of the UK fan club on the internet at the time, and he wanted to know, well, why would Motown be doing this? Because they don't own the tracks, and anything they've got is unfinished and incomplete, and would be damaging to Frankie Valli's career at this point in time. I think those are almost his exact words. And so he said, who are you in touch with? And I gave him Harry Weinger's information and number, and he got in touch with Harry, and then everything just died. And the next thing we heard was that Harry Weinger got in touch with me and asked me for a list of all of the release tracks that we knew of. This is
Asking you.
This is the head of Motown, of Universal Motown, asking me.
Asking you, yeah.
Asking me to tell him what the discography is of the group at his label. Anyway, I compiled the information with the help of George Ingram, our master researcher over the decades, and he said that he had agreed. He had met Bob Gaudio and had lunch with him, and agreed that they would do a Motown anthology of just the release material. And a double CD was promised and eventually came. But what became apparent was that deal involved obviously some financial backtracking, because clearly the Four Seasons partnership owed Motown a whole load of money for all of the sessions that the Four Seasons and Frankie had done at the label, because like most record labels, they charged the artists for the sessions, and then they deducted the cost of the sessions from the royalties earned. So it was recorded at the time when Frankie and Bob had left Motown and signed with Warner Curb and Private Stock, that they'd never received any royalties from Motown whatsoever. So any royalties that had accrued had been set against the debt, and that debt was still probably pretty massive, even when we were in 2007 and this project was being launched. So to pay for this project and to get a deal done, Frankie and Bob, as I understand it, got agreement to do a solo album on Frankie, which was Romancing the 60s, which was released on the Motown label. So the two of them came out at or about the same time, riding on the back of Jersey Boys. And I think that was when Charles Alexander also did with Bob Guardio the Jersey Beat box set.
Right.
So you had milking the main catalogue, and you had milking the original Motown releases for the very first time on CD.
Doesn't it seem like there was a little behind the scenes dealing, backstabbing or back dealing here? You and Paul Nixon go to Harry Wenger with your proposal, and he says, well, wait a minute, I'll have to get approval. And he talks to Peter Bennett. That's the end of your project, but then they come out with their own project.
Of course, but then,
yes,
guys, we're fans. We're fans. We're used to record companies treating fans like this and being very secretive about what they do, and doing their own thing, whatever we think or whatever we want.
And then adding insult to injury, they come out with their own, and it still doesn't have any unreleased tracks in it.
Well, yeah, but then we look at it closely and we listen to it closely and we realize, thanks, Harry, you've done something very sneaky in this project. And what you've done is you've included two alternative versions.
Right. Now, Ken, let me ask you. Now, those two alternative versions, had they been released before, or were those the two unreleased?
No,
tracks?
never. They were two unreleased tracks, but they were released songs.
Right, correct. Yeah, but nothing new had been released.
No, Charisma and Listen to Yesterday.
Oh, I love both of those.
Yesterday was a completely different arrangement.
Yes,
with the Beach Boys type harmonies, and not the girl backing singers that Bob Crew had released in '73, and Charisma was the extended version, which I subsequently found on tape had been on an acetate, but more about acetate as we move along.
That must have been purely accidental, though. You don't think he did that intentionally? He probably didn't even.
Yeah, but he must have been an intent there, and maybe it was a little sort of thank you for the help that I gave him.
I think you're giving him too much credit, really.
because he had already included the 45 version of Charisma, so why include the extended version if it had never been released before?
Right.
I haven't listed it as a release track, but as you say, Anthony, it may have been an accident.
Ken, we know a lot of the partnership archives have gone through a lot of iterations, and some of the stuff has been mislabeled, misplaced. Is it possible that as part of this effort, they just took the wrong box?
It is possible, and come on to some of that, because obviously keeping records from paper records right the way through into the computer age and databases and records of everything that an artist had recorded is a very complex situation over a number of decades. What happened is possible. Then we thought, well, when we did the reviews and we got quotes from Bob Gaudio and from Harry Weinger, it was to say, well, Peter Bennett had said, well, there are no unreleased tracks, and Harry Weinger said, well, I understand Bob Gaudio doesn't want any, didn't want any unreleased tracks in, and there's nothing, and to quote his exact words, slated for release. So that doesn't mean that the songs didn't exist. It was
That
really
was totally disingenuous, wasn't it?
it was disingenuous, particularly given the help that we'd provided. But it is what it is. But never want to give up on. I mean, very much so. It all stems back to being badly treated as a fan club back in the early days and into the early 80s when the fan clubs collapsed, but also the cease and desist order when you tried to start a fan club website on the internet. So I was feeling very disenchanted, more than disenchanted, with the Four Seasons partnership by this time. Too many decades of poor treatment for all fans, not just the UK ones, but so we were happy to have that box set. And but Peter Bennett had basically challenged Universal Motown's ownership of these tracks, which obviously was clear they owned them.
That never stops a lawyer, does it?
But no.
Especially Peter Bennett, from what I've heard and read.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and many people have spoken of him, but he's passed away now, and
Yes, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. So, but thanks, but no thanks for what was done in the past, and it probably and in many ways, this was damaging to Frankie's reputation to some extent. But who cares when Jersey Boys is riding high and earning so much money, and the film is out, and we're heading into another decade, by 2010.
I don't want to, I can't obviously put myself in Bob Gaudio's mind, but I think that would have been actually the perfect time to release unreleased tracks. They weren't coming out with any new material. What was 1995, Hope and Glory was the last time they put out anything.
That was 92. That was 92.
That was 92, yeah.
92, yeah, that's right, 1992. Hope
and I love that album.
The last time they had any new material. So here they are. They had this big, rejuvenation because of Jersey Boys. All their music is being played, but it's old music. Yeah, why not say, oh, here's new material never heard before? It seemed like it would have been a perfect time. But
but there are an awful lot of long-term Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons fans who just love the guy, love everything he's done, will just go out and see him, and it remains that way to this day. They'll just go out and see him because they love the music, they love to see him on stage. They don't care who his backing band are, really, as long as they sound like the Four Seasons and do the harmonies and play the music well,
And I'm one of those fans.
Yeah, we're all like that. But
we're all like that.
I still think the fans, when they hear this material, I would have thought, oh my gosh, they had to have appreciated it, and enjoyed it. New material, and it was great material.
There's just the West Coast perspective. Out here, the people I talk to, most people, and especially the younger group, don't relate Jersey Boys to the Four Seasons. They relate Jersey Boys to the New York musical, and it takes them a while to understand there's a tie-in back with that 60s group called the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
They tie a little bit into Frankie Valli, but they don't tie it into the Four Seasons.
That's an important point, Chuck. Yeah. Because
I would have to agree with Chuck. Being on the West Coast myself, yes, especially the younger generation.
Yeah.
Well, they must not be too bright. If they saw the play and saw the movie, how could they not make a connection?
But
But
here,
I thought,
but
They
Anthony,
hadn't seen it.
one thing we
The
have.
movie didn't come out for several years afterwards. But at the time
Yeah.
that they were releasing the box set and the Motown double set and the Valli Romancing the '60s, they were trying to tie it into the success of the Jersey Boys. But I think a large segment of the marketplace did not totally tie in a relationship of the Four Seasons, the original Four Seasons,
I would agree.
to the current releases of Jersey Boys.
and
They tied it more into the Jersey Boys CD, which was by the Cast album.
and the cast
That
album.
that to me would limit the potential marketability of some of the unreleased as compared to what some of the other groups that had different followings and had success with on a
Well, I think-
regular basis releasing unreleased stuff.
I would think it would just take a little bit of explanation, promotion. Four Seasons seldom got good promotion, but just with
That's
some
the problem.
promotion and say, this is by the Four Seasons, and that movie or that play is actually about them. And here
Yeah,
they
but
are.
it's also a distortion of the history. So when you look at the Jersey Boys the movie, it's not an accurate portrayal of the Four Seasons history, and we as fans and collectors for all through the decades know that. But the younger
Right.
generation who locked into this music and thought, "This is great. This is a great show. I love this. I love these Jersey Boys." They were not relating to our history and our decades. You remember,
No.
we're a bunch of old guys. We've been around eons,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really relate to what people see or think of the Four Seasons when they hear of them from Jersey Boys.
Exactly. And Ken, you can't blame them. If they didn't live it, see it, and hear it, they don't know.
Exactly.
Well, if you look at YouTube a lot, they have a lot of Four Season music, and I don't know, there's this trend, I'm not sure what you call it, where people, and it's all young people, they do these reviews. They
Oh, yes.
They
Yeah.
show a YouTube video and the music, and then they react to it. And on all the comments, you'll see, oh, those Four Seasons, they had so many hits in the 60s and 70s. And, there's a movie about them called Jersey Boys. You ought to see it. So I think, some people are obviously aware of that,
Yes.
who knows how many, what the percentage of people who don't, but I think you have to expect that in any situation.
Well, yeah,
But
you had a diversity between a group's historical career and a show, which was a brilliant portrayal of the music and a storyline that partly related, substantially related to their career as an original group. But then, there was the jump to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and no credit given to the Four Seasons that we followed and we watched in the 70s. No credit given to them, which was always something that irked with an awful lot of Four Seasons fans.
Ken, can I say one more thing on this, and then I'll be quiet so I don't take us away from where we want to go. Look, here on the West Coast, growing up, I was a teenager in the late 70s. You hardly heard anything about the Four Seasons other than the albums and the success that they had. Now, when Jersey Boys came out, thank God, that changed everything. You did have more people talking about them, but as Chuck said, it was the Jersey Boys, not the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
The Jersey Boys.
Yeah. So in the midst of this euphoria, for want of a better description, that we all felt because we all went to the shows, we all absolutely loved them because it just made us so thrilled to hear the music performed so well by actors, and it was the ultimate tribute show. But at the same time, when we got to 2010, things changed dramatically because information started to surface on the back of the success of Jersey Boys, and in 2010, some acetate surfaced on a tape I got from George Ingram, which had ultimately come from the US and contained stuff from Tommy DeVito's back catalogue that Rex Woodard had picked up from him during the writing of the book that would eventually inform the script that would become Jersey Boys. But also, there were 3 acetates on that tape, and they were Motown unreleased tracks. So I received these, and having the ability technically to be able to put them, clean them as an amateur sound engineer, and put them on YouTube. I put them on YouTube and started to say to people, well, why haven't these been released? And they were hymn to hair lovers, and you got to make your tomorrow tonight. And they, but there was also a Charisma extended version as well, and also Hickory extended version as well. So altogether, we had knowledge of 5 unreleased tracks. Well, one of them had been released, and that is Charisma extended, but we didn't have the other 3. So there were 3 tracks that I was able to put onto YouTube, and it started a debate going, but no reaction from the Four Seasons partnership at this point in time. So
yeah, that did serve to sort of verify that original list that you got.
well, it did. It confirmed.
Right.
It confirmed 3 of the tracks on that list that we, that we thought, well, this is right. But then, and then I had received about the same time anonymously, and I still don't know to this day who it came from, because the email sort of blanked. I don't know how they did it, but I received a tape index which listed a whole raft of tapes known as production tapes, P tapes, and they were all Four Seasons P tapes, plus some other tapes as well, T tapes, which were safety copy tapes that Motown made of completed tracks that they stored elsewhere. And I got in touch with various people, and one of the guys was a guy at Ace Records, who name I won't mention so as not to embarrass him. And he was very interested in stuff I've been talking about, and as was Paul Nixon, but still didn't see any joy in Paul pursuing anything with Harry Weinger. But this guy was in the Motown archives in New York City, and he found a microfiche set, and he was looking through it for other tracks, and he found Four Seasons tracks, and so he scanned each of the microfiche and he sent them to me, and we got something like 28 microfiche copies of artist cards, and these were the index cards that were used in the 70s to record the information about master tracks and recording sessions. Every one of them had a master number, which meant the session was sanctioned, recording had begun, the tracks were, to my point of view, completed, and some of the artist cards showed that they'd been copied either as 16-track to other locations on T-tapes, or they'd been mixed down to stereo as an SMX tape for listening purposes. So it became evident that by combining the tape index, the artist cards, and putting all this information together, it all correlated, it all tied together. So I was able to build a database on spreadsheet of what had happened at Motown, and a couple of other things arrived, like a printout of a database of all the masters at Motown, some of which had been released, but at least 15 of them hadn't.
Wow.
This became crazy. It became absolutely an abomination from a fan's perspective that an artist of this standard and quality should have so much material buried in an archive. I mean, we know about the lost archives, the lost multi-tracks in the 60s. We know about private stock going bust and all those multi-tracks being lost.
Wow.
So, you know, what else existed of the Four Seasons? We knew that these were 16 tracks. We knew that they existed. The big question was, are they being preserved because tapes deteriorate? Are they being stored properly? Those were questions I was asking at the time. All I wanted was to make sure that, firstly, they were preserved, and secondly, that sometime at some stage, somebody would get access to them and you know, they'd get heard, because it's art. You know, I regarded it
Sure it is.
art that should be. It didn't matter whether it was Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. It could be any artist, as far as I'm concerned. It's art, and it should be made available.
Agreed.
I've said that about other artists, about Bob Crew, about
Yeah.
Charlie Colello, about Gene Thomas, my good ragdoll lead singer friend. So, you know, this became a passion rather than you know, a bit of a nagging doubt. You know, as Anthony asked at the beginning, you know, it was a nagging doubt for a long time, but then by this time it became a passion.
And you were sort of continuing to write about this in your
Yeah,
blogs.
I had blogs. I was doing blogs with Mark, my son, on his blog, and I had a Four Seasons set of blog posts, and they'd flowed through from 2006 when I first started asking questions about the catalogue, and Stefan and I were doing research on, you know, whether decent copies of in stereo existed, you know, what had happened to the stereo mixes, but that was all about the 60s. But it wasn't until after 2011 and the artist cards arriving that it became serious. But there wasn't any joy or any information coming out of the partnership. There was no response to us. So we got on with searching out vinyl quality, because it looked as though there was not going to ever be another proper issue of high quality Four Seasons tracks from the master tapes. So we did the mono archive, recovering stuff from vinyl. And, you know, during all this time, I'd researched Bob Crew's tracks, Charlie Colello's tracks, Gene Thomas's tracks, and done loads and loads of stuff, because this was a hobby in retirement. I've been retired 20 years now. So that was where we were. But once Stefan passed away in 2015, I had to finish the mono archive. It was where to go next. So with Facebook kicking off in a major way, I decided that I'd have to publish somewhere the information that had been gathered over this last decade or so on the Motown Unreleased. And so I started the Four Seasons Motown Unreleased campaign Facebook group, and started to share the information that was on artist cards, with scans and information, and putting tracks out. Yeah.
Ken, real quick, what year did you start that page? Did you say 2015?
2016-ish. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it slowly built up, 100 or so members.
Great page.
A couple of hundred. But it still wasn't achieving any results until by 2018 I got a phone call from Snapper Records of London
Wow.
to say that they have a concept proposal agreed in principle with the major record companies and with Frankie and Bob, that and they want the UK fan club to help research and compile it.
Wow.
They had been in touch with obviously all the major record companies, and they'd had a track record of doing major box sets on rock artists mainly, like Wishbone Ash, who were a 70s rock group, and I think they did another one on a group called Family. But I'm not a hard rock person, so I was sort of a bit discounting this, but they offered to pay my expenses to go down to London, so wasn't any labour to get on a train and go down with Lynn Berlin, who's the secretary of the fan club, and we kept the fan club going just as a sort of a website-based group of related people, and they introduced us to a great guy, a wonderful record company guy called Bob Fisher, who'd been at West Side Records, Sequel Records. He'd been at Motown in '75, and he'd been responsible for the release of Life and Breath. That was it.
Oh, yes.
And he wanted that to be a follow-up release in the UK to My Eyes Adored You, which it was. And it had a little bit of success in the UK charts. But when we were down with talking with Snapper in 2018, we struck up an immediately good relationship with Bob, because he was such a great guy, and the executive Cliff Dane and Ian Crockett, the coordinator, said to us, well, what do you want from this box set? Because we intend to cover as many sources and as much information and as many releases as we can. And Lynn, before I had a chance to say anything, said, we want the Motown unreleased. So
yeah,
that set the scene. And so, okay, well, we'll pursue that one. And then the project kicked off, and we on a handshake agreed to supply everything we had. When I say everything we had, everything that Rex Woodard had supplied, people like John Hornsby had recorded, other people who'd been to shows, other people who'd supplied acetates. Everything.
Wow.
When you were at this meeting, did you think that you were dreaming? Did you have to pinch yourself? Could you believe it?
Yeah, it was a complete transcendental moment.
Yeah.
Anthony. I thought
That had to be great.
Yeah, I thought I was on magic mushrooms or something like that.
Yeah.
I said, well, Bob and Frankie want this to happen, because this is the first time they've ever reached out to have fan involvement in any sort of project. Well, I traveling home on the train, I thought to myself, well, we are in the 21st century, so science fiction can actually become fact, so that maybe they've changed as people.
As you were relating this story, it reminds me of, are you familiar with the movie All the President's Men, Woodward and Bernstein trying to get the goods on Nixon?
Yeah.
So you had your quest for the Holy Grail here, the Motown unreleased, and it seems like every time your quest sort of hit a little bit of a snag there was some deep throat character who intervened and gave you some information so you could carry on and keep going.
Mark, my son would say to me, "It's a higher power. It's the higher power." The perspective of getting a commitment was the first time we'd had it. Now, Chuck is the only one who, before that, who's in our group, related to a commitment and involvement with the issue of material, aren't you, Chuck? You were involved.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be able to create a contact with Ace and worked on the Edición de Oro release, which didn't come out as I expected because of the issues of conflict between the deal they had with Rhino in this country. Ken, I think one of the things I've found in traveling around the world, that the record companies in different parts of the world are very different than they are in the States here. And I think we were very fortunate that Snapper was willing to take on a project of this size and create an anthology which stretched through so many years, so many record companies. I think you'd have a real difficulty with getting any American company to take on anything anywhere close to that. I think that's the one value we've got out of this.
Well,
we've got the whole package in one place, and it's all there.
Snapper had the experience of of doing this, and they knew there was big money involved. Now, we can all do the sums. We know this was a £750,000 project when it was conceived, and so of course money says everything in terms of the Four Seasons partnership. If the money's there, they'll go for the project.
Yeah.
It's always been that way, and I don't expect it to be any different. And other artists are other artists. I don't really know how they see their work in our form, but the music business is the music business, and music is about money. It's streaming money at the moment, and it's going to be in the future. This was the last opportunity to get hard physical copy, and it was a chance that we just could not turn down. We could not walk away from. I had to do everything and work all the hours that God sends me to be able to do that project. But that was the process. At this point, we were still in the concept, and the things we were asked to do were what could we provide compared to what Snapper and the Four Seasons partnership could provide. So we committed to provide all of any live or good quality recordings that we had or we had access to, and acetates, unreleased, cassette tapes, whatever, plus all the memorabilia, all the scans of the 45 picture sleeves, labels, anything that was needed. And John Pingree was the main collector of all of that. Lynn had lots of the label scans, etc., that she'd gathered from various sources and connections around America. And Ray Nickel had all the 45s, and so any missing masters could be supplied from that. And so the concept of a box set, which would include the Motown Unreleased, had reached fruition. But we were not told what would happen with regard to the Universal Motown archive. We were not told what levels of access we would be given. And really, that's the point at which we move into the next phase. That we'd gone from wanting Motown unreleased, knowing that it was there, all the way through to, well, it is there. We've proved it's there. We've got the list of information that shows it's there. Can we have it?
So Ken, let me ask you, aside from this disc here, 22, and all the Motown that was released, how many more songs do you know or anticipate that should be ready for release, if I may ask?
Well, I have to keep reminding myself of this fact, because given that we've got what we've got, I have done so much research over the years, but the final list is included in my final blog of tracks that could be there, and the titles are there.
Got it.
Located. And I know for a fact that the Vault Services researcher, Andy Scurro, will come on to discuss that in a future part where we talk about the process and we talk in detail about it. But I'll get to the number of tracks that we found, and we'll assemble a more detailed discussion on how many tracks remain, what compared to what we've got. But I can tell you now that will consider a minimum of 15 other completed tracks of a similar quality to the ones that are included.
Wow. And let me tell you, this disc 22, my God, this I cannot stop listening to it. It is just some great great material, especially the tracks that had never been released. I mean, they had some great work at Motown. Excellent.
Yes.
Well, you've got to remember that I was listening to this stuff back in 2019. So I've had to sort of accept,
Wow.
just wait for you guys to sort of catch me up. And so
Right.
this discussion today is the first opportunity I've had, as Anthony knows, to really disclose how we got to the start point. But there's a whole other story that delves into what we got, what we found, what also was going to help the box set survive. Question
Right.
like why we didn't get any more Motown when I knew they were there, when even Motown knew they were there. Even
Wow.
Bob Gaudio knew that they were there. Maybe Bob Gaudio had them and still has them. All of this, I think, we'll talk about. I'll reveal in a future session.
And I would look forward to that.
That's
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
an excellent promo for the next session.
Sure.
Here's a final question, and a kind of almost a scary thought. What if Snapper never actually came to you, Ken? What if they just, made this agreement with Bob and Frankie and the record companies and just said, just never brought it up to you? I think the box set would be considerably less appealing or less attractive.
Well, we weren't interested in having it any other way. Made that clear that there had to be unreleased material. There had to be a good amount of unreleased material, not just from the Motown period when we knew there were masses of tracks, but also from
Throughout.
Phillips period and from the post Phillips period, and what Frankie and Bob had in their own archives. But again, that's another story to delve into, and
Yes.
Many questions around this box set. What got into it? What didn't get into it? What other sources there are?
And you know what, Ken? You mentioned right now another story. I think there are several stories that could lead to several more shows, that you could share with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to share all the information.
Oh, yes.
It was 3 years of my life working with a very dear friend who unfortunately passed away when he could have been glorying in it.
Right.
We all are now. But the thing is, I owe it to him and also to all the fans who've helped me.
Right.
Because all I have been has been a channel for information. And
but a very important channel, Ken. Don't downplay your role. A very important channel, especially to us fans.
Did all the dirty work.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing was, I was very being very tech savvy. I was able to do stuff with the material that I had, and I was able to salvage material, and I was able to write. Because I'm retired. I live in Spain.
Right.
We have a siesta every afternoon for 3-4 hours. So,
beautiful.
What do you do when you play music, you research music? That's what my life has been about, music, and enjoying life here in Spain and when I'm in England back with the family. So,
that's awesome.
It's a number of different decisions made that led me to the position of having the ability to do this, and
of course,
great help and a lot of great support from people like you and other guys who may watch this, and I'm thankful to everybody, and I gave credit to as many people as possible in the collector's notes, which
you always have,
which were not just my work but the work of everybody who is mentioned in there. So
right. If I may say, and then you let me know closing comments. I have one closing comment, but right now, also there was a CD released on the work of Bob Crew that you also played a role in. I believe you wrote the.
Yes. Yeah, I was approached.
We hear about that too.
Yeah, I was approached a couple of years ago by Ace Records and asked to contribute to the soul of Bob Crew.
Yeah.
But I had done 8 CDs of Bob Crew's material in the Seasons Connections, volumes 1 to 8, which didn't only include Bob Crew's work, but Charlie Calello's work and
Right.
other Four Seasons projects. So,
Right.
there are well over 100, was around 150 tracks there that
Wow.
I salvaged with the help of other people. Some are passed away now, but yeah, and then there's also the future. Is what are we going to do in the future, and what's going to happen
Exactly.
from a fan's
Right.
perspective? And really, I want to move to that point after we go through and we discuss all aspects of the box set that you guys want to talk to me about.
That would be great.
But
That would be
the
great.
thing about the box set is people might criticize it and say, well, I really only wanted the 60s stuff, or they might have said, well, I'm not
No.
really interested in the dance material, and why did you put this stuff in? The thing was, it had to be holistic. You had to have an appreciation of Frankie's voice and the materials that he worked on through all the decades, and
Yeah.
the attempts with
Yeah.
Bob Cordy
True.
to try to find success with the fans and with different audiences. It was often misguided and erratic and didn't generate success, but then accidentally would generate great success, like the success of the dance mixes in 1988 of Who Loves You in December 63, and again
Right.
in 94 in the dance clubs, and again in 2007 with the European hit of Begging, as well as the success of Jersey Boys. These things are all successes,
Sure.
which some are accidental, some are attempts at success that worked. But whatever the challenge, Bob and Frankie have tried to find a way of making a success out of material that they've done, but they haven't always tuned into the fans. This is the first time that
True.
and this is probably their biggest achievement. It's certainly ours as a fan group, and certainly mine in terms of the decades of collecting and the interest. But it's opened up the future for them.
Right.
The future years.
Yeah, there you go. Look, in receiving this box set, I'm still like a kid in a candy store when I just even look at it. And what I was looking forward to receiving, yes, of course, the music, but also this book that Ken wrote. I mean, this is, I mean, I've read it a few times, and every time I put on one of the CDs, I go right to it. I mean, it is just some great writing and so informative.
It was almost worth the price of the book.
You know what? Yes. I love it. Ken did an outstanding job on this. It's
the Bible.
It's great. Yes. Every fan needs this.
There's two things that I've learned from going through the box set.
Yeah.
One of them is I never realized there were as many alternate versions in the different 45s and albums of some of the songs as there are. And to compare them is interesting.
Great
the other
point.
thing is the progression they made, moving from BJ to Phillips and having the records have the hit Four Seasons songs and then other artists' records that they could tag on to fill out the album. Excuse me. To the creativity that started with Rag Doll and moved forward in the albums when more of the songs on the albums were Gaudio and Crew productions, or there were some of the other the writers that they had in the stable, and they took on a new direction. And I think that's interesting to watch that progression. And you'll talk more about that as we move to the next section.
I think one of the things I want to come out and is a key part of everything I've ever done with relate to this is that for every part of this box set there is the help of long-term friends and people they worked with, and they kept going back to the people they knew. This may be an Italian thing, but most of us stay with people we've worked with before, we trust,
Right.
we know the quality of their work, and I will mention them in due course as we go through, because
That'd be great.
they're all in there. Anthony knows many of them because many of them come from the same neck of the woods.
Yeah.
But we'll come to that. So
look forward, Ken.
I'll let you close it off, Anthony, and
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I think that was a wonderful session, and it's sort of a good lead into to what comes next. So hopefully we'll have many, as George was saying, many such sessions.
Yes.
It seems like we can discuss the box set for years to come.
Sure.
Obviously the next thing to do is to go on to the process, and obviously the compilation and the selection, and where we got the music from.
Right.
And you could do this in two ways. We could do it holistically as the project process and how we got to the final product. But then if you go back to the individual discs, there are reasons why some of the discs work better than others, and why they came out the way they did. Because some people might say, well, it doesn't seem right to have Genuine Imitation Live cassette in mono with all these additional bonus tracks. Why is that? Well, there is one very simple reason why the bonus tracks are the way they are, and that is space. A CD can give you 80 minutes of music, and
Exactly.
that involved an awful lot of work that I'll come on to and discuss in the next session, which discusses the process, perhaps the selection of material.
Okay, to be continued, as they say. To be continued.
Yeah.
That sounds good, and very highly recommended listening here. Ken, I just want to say thank you very much. Anthony, Charles, thank you all very much, and just keep me posted and let me know where we go from here. And I want to thank you, Ken, for all your work.
And thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Of course, I am here as your host. Okay, you let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.